Ooh, you didn't tell me you were a brainiac.
Welcome to LeatherBrainz, your host here, Slap Dog, and it is Week 16 review. So Ben Johnson flexes on his future team, Kyle Pitts is straight booty cheeks, and the Cowboys win and inevitably still lose. Before we get into football, I do got to say, I got my good friend Alan Casanova Castro here. Scotty is absent. He is an absentee here today. So it's just Alan and I, and we're going to be chatting football like I just mentioned. But before we do chat about football, we have to give a shout out to our sponsor, Erica's Healthy Pet. Ladies and gentlemen, whether it be cheesy bites, turkey jerky, beef liver chews, sweet potato chips, and so much more, if you go to ericashealthypet.com and use code LB20, you're going to get 20% off your first order. So go check out ericashealthypet.com and get all of the solutions that you need for your loved animal. Go check it out. Once again, ericashealthypet.com. Use code LB20 for 20% off. And if you're interested, go check out last episode where you can see Alan eat one of these cheesy bites. It was looked like a good time. So, all right, Alan, let's get into football. Let's talk about it. Let's start with the Texans' massive loss. And I say a massive loss. I'm not necessarily talking about the scoreboard here, but the Texans lost their wide receiver, Tank Dell, to an absolutely nasty knee injury. So Dell, he was catching a touchdown in the back of the end zone, and his knee was smashed by his teammate, which, by the way, is not the first time that this has happened, which resulted in him dislocating his knee, which means tearing his ACL. There was some other damage to his knee, but Alan, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not a doctor, and so I don't know all of the terminology, but essentially his knee is screwed up, and he is now done for the season. But I think the bigger concern here is if he will ever play football again, because this was an absolutely devastating injury.
Yeah, this is one of those injuries that reminds me of like Alex Smith when he was with the Redskins, where it was just disgusting looking injury. If you were on X, if you're able to, not the drug, but the app, if you were looking for the injury, there were some stills where you're like, knee caps and knee leg bones don't necessarily look like that, and it was pretty disgusting. The concern for him long term is obviously going to be an issue just with blood flow. Like, will it be able to heal properly? Like, is he going to have any long term issues with this? I think the immediate impact for the Texans is obvious. You know, they're getting ready to play playoff football. They won their division a few weeks ago, so they've already been looking ahead. And this is not how you want to enter the playoffs. You're losing the biggest piece of your offense. If you were watching that game, it was Tank Dell was carving up that Chiefs secondary, and they were moving the ball, and he was a large reason why. And the air kind of went out of the building, literally at the stadium, just kind of didn't have the buzz anymore. Everybody was just kind of over it. You could tell both sides were just kind of like, ooh, let's just move on. Neither side looked like they wanted to play anymore, because it was pretty brutal. Pretty brutal.
Well, yeah, CJ Stroud was almost in tears on the sidelines during the game, which you mentioned X and going to look over there on X. If you go find that, you'll probably see CJ Stroud kind of tearing up on the sideline. And Stroud was getting a lot of flack from a lot of people for this and saying, like, toughen up, and like, why are you sitting there crying because you lost a wide receiver? And it's like his, response was, that's one of my best friends, And so to see that happen, like, I think for a lot of people, maybe you haven't played the sport of football. Maybe like you don't know the camaraderie that goes alongside with that. But like for him to be that close with Tank Dell and then that happened, like, yeah, that would be a tough loss. Like when you lose a teammate like that, especially someone that you're counting on. And this entire Texans team really was counting on Tank Dell, because obviously they lost Stephon Diggs and now they lost another big name wide receiver. Nico Collins has struggled to stay healthy this season. And now what do the Texans do? They go out and they sign free agent wide receiver Deontay Johnson, who was dropped from the Ravens after the Ravens had traded a 5th-round pick to the Panthers earlier this season to get Deontay Johnson. What the hell is going on? This is just a really... I get it. They need a wide receiver really bad, but what's up with these former Steelers divas? That's the question that I have, because you look at someone like Le'Veon Bell, you look at, Antonio Brown is one that definitely comes to mind, and now Deontay Johnson has a very, weird history of being with multiple teams now that last season Deontay Johnson was a Steeler, right? And he's traded to the Panthers. And now he gets traded to the Ravens, and now he's on the Texans. I don't understand what's going on, but it almost makes me like Mike Tomlin a little bit more.
Yeah, which for Deontay Johnson, I think the question is, does he ride the Ravens plane to Houston because they host, or does he just go on his own? I imagine he's going on his own, but I mean, it would be kind of hilarious if he just is like, hey, can I just like hitch a ride with you guys since you guys are already heading that? You guys are heading that way anyways. You're heading that way. Let me just sneak some space. I don't think this is going to be very impactful for the Texans. This is really hard to get anything like in a rhythm with an offense, and CJ Stroud's probably not going to develop any rapport with him. It's going to be a body. They needed a body. He's there. They can, pick him up, and maybe he gives them a few reps here and there. I don't think it's anything impactful. As far as the diva thing, it is weird how all these former Steelers have issues, after the fact, and some of which you probably could have diagnosed ahead of time, but just another long line of issues. This one's even more weird because we just don't really know what happened. It was just he stopped getting reps with the Ravens, and then he stopped kind of participating in anything, and then he's gone. And so it's another.
But that is just so weird to me because it's like the Panthers needed a wide receiver. They go buy Deontay Johnson, and then he gets traded the same year that they trade for him. And I think this puts him in a really bad light as far as like his future outlook for any NFL team. Like, if I was an NFL team that needed a wide receiver and Deontay Johnson was available, I'd be sitting there looking at this entire situation saying, okay, he's probably a red flag, right? Like he got traded from the Steelers, then he gets traded from the Panthers, and then the Ravens cut him after, like you mentioned, we don't know exactly what happened, but if he's getting cut, it's probably not a good thing. Like whatever happened there, it was not pretty for him or the team.
Yeah. That's what I said. Picking him up was purely just a body move. They're obviously not trying to have any impact. And he's definitely, something's going on between the ears with him where it's just not clicking, or it's not jiving, or he's not putting in the effort, or not being there for his teammates, which isn't going to fly in Houston. So I don't even know what this pickup's going to do for them. I think this is more just a knee-jerk reaction to them needing somebody and needing a wide receiver in that room. The only thing, outside of the loss and the kind of the shifting of players in this game, the AFC playoff pictures is kind of rounding into shape just a little bit. I think at least at the top, the Chiefs with this win now just need to win one of their last two to secure the first round bye. So we'll see if they're able to do that. These are not easy games to end the season by any means, because the Broncos are still trying to fight to get into the playoffs. The Steelers are still trying to fight to win the division. So there's a lot to play for a lot of these teams. So this is interesting how it's shaping up. I think for this one, like you said, the bigger impact here is just that Tank Dell's gone. You saw what it did to this offense in the immediate following of his injury. They just couldn't do anything. I think in the fourth quarter, the Texans ran 9 plays for -3 yards in this game. So they literally did nothing once he was gone. And I think they were just really shaken up. So we'll see what this does for them. But the Texans are looking like a one and done now in the playoffs. If you're trying to
I'm glad that was my next question. So I'm glad that you answered that for me, because I tend to agree with you. I think that unfortunately, due to the amount of injuries and the losses that they've obtained throughout the season. Yeah,
Diggs to ACL, Tank Dell now, and now that's a big chunk of your offense. They have some good tight ends, and obviously they have Mixon at running back, but not having your security blanket, so to speak, that Tank Dell was becoming for CJ Stroud, I think it's gonna rear its ugly head right away in the playoffs. You're just gonna see him kind of struggle, depending on who they draw. So we'll see, but definitely this game had bigger implications other than win-loss.
Sure. Garrett Wilson, he misses LaFleur. I don't know if you knew this, but the Rams win this game 19-9. And after the Rams won this game, Garrett Wilson was asked in a press conference about his former offensive coordinator, Mike LaFleur, who is now the Rams offensive coordinator, by the way. Wilson and LaFleur were seen chatting after the game was over, and this is what Wilson had to say about LaFleur. He said, "Love him, man. My rookie year, looking back on it, it was a special time, and I might have took it for granted. I love him. Seeing how he's helping that offense, I'm happy for him, man." So me reading this entire thing really makes me believe that Garrett Wilson just wants to get the fuck off the Jets. Like that's where I think Garrett Wilson's mentality is. which is kind of interesting. Like
Yeah.
everything I've seen this year about from Garrett Wilson in the camp that is the Jets, it seems like he's really frustrated. Like he's frustrated with the entire offense. He's frustrated with the way things are going, which is understandable because the Jets are not in a favorable position at all. Aaron Rodgers has not really amounted to be what I think the Jets were hoping he was going to be. And Garrett Wilson, who had a very historic run as a rookie, has not had great quarterback luck since then, and the offense has really taken a turn for the worse since Mike LaFleur's left the Jets. So, all to say, I mean, you think Garrett Wilson wants out?
Oh yeah, I think he's wanted out for. And people have been seeing this for a few weeks now, where he's kind of hinted at and been frustrated with, and posting stuff on Instagram. That's my favorite form of letting the public know that you want out of a situation. It's just like really cryptic Instagram posts, like. Just like a black screen that says, I guess this is it. You know, like I think that's probably my favorite part of this NFL is just like the cryptic stuff that you get on social media, because then everybody just loses their mind. This just, I think, further, highlights and cements everybody's thoughts and opinions about Garrett Wilson. He wants out. I don't know if there's going to be any way to salvage this relationship. He's a, I would say would you say he's like an all-pro talent? I mean, I think he's flirting with it. I think he's
yeah,
I think he has that
I think
ceiling.
so, but it also, like, it's hard to see, right?
I know.
Like, it's hard to see that because the Jets have been so bad this year, and Aaron Rodgers hasn't looked great. So, because of that, his wide receivers haven't looked great.
Yeah, and his share went to Devontae Adams when Devontae Adams came in, and so there's more mouths to feed. And I wouldn't blame him for being super frustrated, because I think he does have that in him. I think listen, if he's looking, everybody's listening. There's not one NFL team that's not going to be like, let's see, unless it's somebody that's, their team's like really in rebuild mode. But pretty much every team is going to be listening to what the Jets have to offer. And I think, unfortunately, if you're in the AFC East, they're not going to deal him to anybody there. So you got to look at where else they might be dealing him. But
I don't think
he definitely wants out. I think they're going to. I think they're going to. I don't know. I have this premonition of the Jets just blowing everything up. Aaron Rodgers says, nope, I'm out. I don't want to play here anymore. Devontae Adams is like, well, this has been a good ride. Everybody else is like, I'm out of here. They still don't know, like, long-term coaching situation. I don't know. What are they doing? Where are they going?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
there's a whole vision here that I don't think anybody has any insight into. And I mean, I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to be there. And I think Garrett Wilson wants out. I think you don't say things like that and post things like that and be like, yeah, I'll see you guys next year. I think he's done. Their season's done. He's done. Everybody's done. Nobody cares. They get to play the Bills twice now to end the season. I can only imagine what those scores are going to be like. It's going to get brutal. But I don't know. I think if anything, I don't think they keep him.
You think it was a mistake for them to fire Robert Saleh?
In hindsight, yeah. I think in hindsight, I mean, even in the moment, you could have said like, premature. Aaron Rodgers isn't Aaron Rodgers anymore.
Correct.
He's not giving you.
Well, you mentioned Aaron Rodgers. Have you seen the documentary on Netflix that he's come out with?
Oh God, some of it clips. I've seen clips, and the only clips I've really paid attention to is because his family talk. My wife watched The Bachelorette. I think his brother was on or something.
Yep.
And that's when it first came to light, where everybody realized like, oh fuck, Aaron Rodgers' family kind of hates him. So I watched clips about that because that was like the only real interesting part. Otherwise, I really don't have any interest in watching that.
I've started to watch. Admittedly, I haven't finished it, but I've started to watch it. And I don't want to say I haven't gotten that far in, mind you. I'm one episode in, and there's a couple episodes, so bear with me here. But I watched the first episode and was like, do I not hate this guy like I thought I did? It was the weirdest. It was the weirdest. Huh? It is a little bit different because you see Aaron Rodgers in all of, like, you see him go on the McAfee show. You see him like every offseason where, we always jest that Aaron Rodgers is looking for media attention, which, I'm not saying he's not, because I still do believe that there is some of that going on.
Yeah.
But you watch his history of like how he got to where he was and like what happened for him to get to the place that he, him being the Packers quarterback and the whole Favre thing. And you watch some of that and I'm like, okay, maybe this guy is a little bit more human than what I sometimes had made him out to be. And So I said, I haven't finished it.
I think that's a good public service announcement for all NFL fans to hop on the I hate this person sucks. Because I think if we gave everybody their own documentary and had to watch an episode, I think everybody would just be like, oh, all right. Yeah, he's like a normal dude. He's like me.
Well,
he's doing what he needs. Who's one person you don't think would change your mind?
Kyle Pitts. I think he's trash. I think Kyle Pitts is trash. The Falcons the Falcons win this game 34-7, right? And okay, before we even talk about Kyle Pitts, we have to talk about Kirk O'Chains, right? Because we didn't get to talk about this last episode because this had happened after we had recorded that episode. But what in the hell happened here, man? Like, in the span of less than a week, right around there, Kirk Cousins is benched by the Falcons, right? He's benched by the Falcons, and it's rumored now that the Falcons are going to trade Kirk to avoid a future cap hit, save some money. But this whole thing is really incredibly interesting because they decide to bench Kirk Cousins while the Falcons are still in playoff contention, right? So that to me was one of the most alarming, or not alarming, but surprising things about this entire decision was you paid a lot of money and signed this quarterback to a 4-year, $160 million contract, right? That's telling me as just a person who is observant of the NFL, you want this guy for the next few years, right? And then what do the Falcons do in this latest draft? They draft Michael Penix, right, with the 6th overall pick or whatever the pick was very early, and that completely blindsided everybody because they just signed Kirk Cousins to this 4-year deal. Kirk Cousins plays 13 or 14, 15, whatever games it is, and is now benched and going to probably be traded from the rumors that are coming out of the Falcons camp. I did not have this on my bingo card. I'm going to be honest with you, Alan. Now, if the season was over and Kirk Cousins looked like crap, I could understand bringing Michael Penix out and saying, okay, let's see what we have in this young man who is actually old for a rookie quarterback. But they're still in playoff contention. And to make that move, I think is very, very solidifying that Kirk Cousins will not be a starting quarterback for the Falcons moving forward, barring injury. Yeah, this is, I think financially, if you nerd out into any of the numbers behind what this was, and you alluded to some of it, like there's $90 million in dead cap. Like that's what they're at. This is similar to what we saw with Russell Wilson with the Broncos. But it's actually a bigger dead cap hit. So that's actually back-to-back years we've seen teams eat all this money. Now, you could say for the Broncos, this is largely working out. And so I think a lot of the hand-wringing of like dead money, we'll see. Because I think the roster is good enough for the Falcons that they might be able to skirt by this. But I think, like you laid out, all the decision-making makes no sense. I think we talked about this draft night when we were watching it together and they drafted Penix. Why did you even sign Kirk Cousins to that amount of money? Why didn't you just wait? Like, did you forget? Like, were they nervous? Yeah, were they nervous they weren't going to get anybody? Did they? I think they were. If I were to pull back the curtain and look, I think they were nervous they weren't going to get a quarterback in the draft. So they panic signed Kirk Cousins to have somebody there. So at least they had some sort of stability at quarterback because honestly, that's what they needed, right? One Achilles Kirk Cousins was better than Ritter. I think we all agreed. And I think they panicked there. And then I think when they saw that they were going to have Penix, they had to look towards the future. So they're like, wait a second. Kirk Cousins with the contract he signed, I think everybody assumed it was going to be at least for 2 seasons because there was a 4-year, $180 million deal, $100 million in guarantee. And it's just a ton of money. And so they just didn't think everything through and didn't do it in the correct order. It's like their order of operations, if you're doing math, was like fucking way off. They were like, you know what, let's sign this quarterback. Oh, shit, we can actually draft one. Should have thought about that. So I think what they did was by benching him, I think they're just putting their chess pieces out there saying, you know what, somebody wants him. We can try to save some money for the books for next season. If not, we're just going to have to eat $90 million. But I think reading a few articles that I was this morning, I think by making this move now, if they do it this offseason, it actually saves them $65 million in the long term. So this is a total finance decision, I think, on their part. And Kirk Cousins' play on the field didn't do them any favors because, in the last 5 weeks, he had like 9 picks and 1 touchdown. Yeah. So I think it just accelerated everybody's thought process here. And they're like, you know what, we got to think with our wallet a little bit now too. And I think the best thing to do is let's move on and save some money, all while seeing what we have with Penix at the same time. Because there's a lot of decisions that need to be made. But they just did it all out of order. Okay, well, there's a couple things I want to unpack here that you had just stated. Let's start with Kirk Cousins not looking great, right? Like he, the film and what he was doing over these last few weeks was not a wonderful example of good football. What team would want him? What team is going to want to pay that money to get Kirk Cousins? Like that. That's the question that comes to my mind first. Is like, yeah, obviously every single season in the off season, it's much easier for us to look at the landscape of the quarterback or NFL teams in general and say, okay, what teams need a quarterback, right? Like we knew that going into the draft last season, we could sit there and say, okay, this team needs a quarterback, this team needs a quarterback, this team is just going to figure it out. Like the Raiders are a wonderful example of a team that was like, well, they got Gardner Minshew and they got Aiden O'Connell and they're going to just figure it out this year. So what teams really could use a quarterback right now? Like the Giants probably could use a quarterback, but they're going to draft one, right? No. So what teams need a quarterback but don't have the draft capital to do it? You want to talk about the Steelers? Because they got Russell. Yeah. They already did this last year, and they got Russell Wilson, right? So,
but that worked out for them. I think
it did.
We talked about this. We talked about this with God bless it. We always mix up these names. What's the Vikings head coach?
Kevin O'Connell.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I always mess that up. There's so many Kevins and Connells and O'Connells, and we keep talking about this. This is we're seeing it. Like, is he the quarterback whisperer? Because we look at what we think is Shanahan with Darnold, couldn't do anything with him. Darnold goes to Minnesota looking like a star. Kirk Cousins with Minnesota looked amazing. Obviously, the Achilles injuries plays into it. And then he goes to Atlanta, and you're like, ugh, what is going on? And then I think what's going to happen is I don't know if they're going to be able to trade him because I don't know who's going to be able who's going to want to pick up that contract. Yeah, who's going to want to pay that, which I don't think is anybody, or who's going to want to give anything up to take that on. So I think they're just going to have to release him. But if everybody's smart, you don't sign Kirk Cousins to anything until you let the draft play out. Like, let the dust settle. I think if and when he gets picked up, it's going to happen after the draft is what my opinion would be, just like immediately after. But shout out Kirk Cousins, man. This man's made almost $300 million in the NFL, and
just being Kirk, wearing chains, being a baller.
I would say he spent 90% of his tenure being a quarterback, everybody dogging on him for not being able to play in the spotlight. So good for him.
I have an idea, and this one, it depends on how the scenario plays out, but the Dolphins could be fun. I mean, they need we talked earlier this season about how the Dolphins did nothing to solidify their quarterback situation when Tua had the brain scrambles, which that's always going to be looming over that entire team, right? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. It's a very interesting situation. We'll figure out how this plays out as we get closer to the offseason and see who has what picks and what's going to happen. But Michael Penix, though, he got the start, and he looked, dare I say, pretty decent for a rookie quarterback in his first game. I mean, his stat line was 18 for 27 for 202 yards and an interception. But I do want to point out that interception is because Kyle Pitts is a shitty-ass tight end. So... sorry, Scotty. I am 100% off the Kyle Pitts train. This guy isn't nearly as talented as the whole world wants him to desperately be. He's just not good. He caught the ball and then basically threw it up in the air in the end zone for a D-back to grab it. So it was not Michael Penix's fault at all in this interception. And I think Kyle Pitts is... I mean, he had a historic rookie season, but aside from that, what has Kyle Pitts done? Everybody has wanted Kyle Pitts to be something and have that rookie season and be that all-star tight end, and he hasn't done it again, right? So, Kyle Pitts, he's trash. I think he's ass. I'm off the train. I will never get back on the train, Scotty. Sorry to say. But Michael Penix, man, hey, congratulations on the win. Maybe this was a good time for the Falcons to roll Michael Penix out when he's playing against a shitty-ass Giants team.
That's what I was just going to say. What a better welcome wagon than getting to play the Giants, who pretty much just playing for that one seed now at this point. They're just kind of like, nobody's really doing anything. Nobody cares. Season was there long ago. Everybody's making career moves now when they're playing. Nobody wants to get injured at this point in the season. But Penix, he looked decent. Everybody felt like this was going to be a Bijan Robinson game. He was going to get a lot of work. The running backs were going to get a lot of work. Drake London went out. We'll see what happens with that. I don't know if he ever ended up coming back, but we'll see what happens there. Very much in contention still. You look at what's happening in that division. So there's scenario here where week 1 we knew Kirk Cousins was starting for this team, and then you said, you know what, by the end of the season, Michael Penix is going to be a quarterback starting in the playoffs, and you're going to have to explain how we got there.
Well,
and I think that would be a wild scenario.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's what I was going to say is maybe this was the plan all along, Alan. Maybe this was the Falcons. They're playing chess while the rest of us are playing checkers, and they're saying, you know what, the best way to motivate a quarterback and make him feel comfortable, take this team that is already almost playoff bound and go to the playoffs and get some playoff experience as a rookie, because you've earned it, champ. You did all this work to get us there, man. So let's inflate the ego. I don't know. I mean, hey, it's the Falcons, Michael Penix. I am interested. I mean, I have vested interest because I do have him in Dynasty. So I'm kind of like, how's this going to play out? And I'm now going to have to watch more Falcons ball.
Yeah. I mean, they're in first right now. You know, there's the Bucs loss. We'll talk about that. And so still weird. They're still there. This is like a weird division through and through. But, you know, this is the thing with this team is everybody in their mom, maybe even grandma, can see how much talent is on this team. They just got to put it together. Maybe Penix is it. Maybe they put it together. Kyle Pitts, you know, whatever. They can make it. They can make it work. You know, I've seen teams make it work with less. So we'll see what happens with the Falcons. But it's weird being a Falcons fan, because I think everything in your brain would tell you with Kirk Cousins getting benched, season's over.
Yeah.
Then you fast forward to today, and you're like, just kidding, we're in first.
We're still in this, baby. Well, there's still a couple more weeks of football, but I don't know how I would feel if I was a Falcons fan, because I would feel like you're constantly sitting at the top of the roller coaster just waiting for it to drop, and it hasn't dropped, and you're like, what are we doing? When are the mechanics going to come fix it?
You're like a battered wife. You're like, I love you, but you just keep hurting me, and I don't know what to do.
You're like, should I leave? You have the
I don't
bed.
know. Is it over? Is it not over? Do I stay? Do I love you more? Are you going to hit me again? I don't know. I don't know.
Well, speaking of hitting, Ben Johnson, he was hitting the gas. He was flexing on his future team that he is probably going to go coach for. And by probably, I mean 100% absolutely. There's not a doubt in my mind. The Lions win against the Bears 34-17. And I'm calling this game the Ben Johnson sweepstakes game. And Ben Johnson showed the Bears exactly why they need him as a head coach. Johnson, I don't know if you saw this. Johnson ran a trick play where Jared Goff pretended to fumble the handoff that was a run play. And then he threw a beautiful lob to Sam Laporta for a touchdown. The whole team was screaming ball on the ground, which made the whole defense think that they were recovering a fumble and that the ball was on the ground. And hey, this should be illegal. This should be illegal. Not the play itself, because what a baller play, but what should be illegal is Ben Johnson. This is literally him just taunting the Bears and saying, like, hey,
100%.
like, this is what you could be. This is what you could have if you had a decent, well, and now they don't even have a head coach, but if you had any sort of semblance of what you were doing as a coaching staff with this offense, you could be something like this. So I just wanted to bring this up because I thought it was a really cool play.
It was a sick play. The
awesome.
The broadcast for it obviously had no idea, because they thought the running back fell down. I think it was Gibbs. They thought Gibbs fell down. They thought Goff was stumbling, and then he turned around and made a miraculous play. And so they didn't even put it together while it was happening.
Why do you do that against the Bears? Why don't you save that for like a play, when you need it in the playoffs?
Because I think with here's what it's going to highlight. You want to talk about the taunting? I think with a disciplined team, this doesn't work.
Probably not.
I think Ben Johnson's underscoring how undisciplined this Bears team is overall. Just saying, like, you guys nobody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I get it. It's a trick play. I think it's fun. The balls to like roll this out in like a game plan. Because Goff even admitted, like, hey, we ran it a few times. But to even have this like in the game plan, and every team has this. Every team has like a few plays where like, all right, if we get squirrely, we'll run it. And I don't think if Goff really thought maybe we'd roll this out. But this is also just like a FU to the Bears, like double FU. Like, we don't even care. We're just going to run like this shit too. You know, whatever.
That's true. Yeah, it's like when you're playing Madden and you're like, you have your set plays that you use to move the ball down the field, and then you have like the plays that you're like, I'll try, and then you have the plays where like, I'm up by so much, I've never ran this play in the playbook. Let me just give it a shot and see what happens. Like, that's what this was.
It's insane because practice time in the NFL, it's pretty regimented. You get so much time, you can do stuff and you practice, and you got to get guys rest, and they have all their other stuff. So to like actually waste brain space on this against the Bears just tells you like how unserious they were this week against the Bears. They're just like, we're going to beat the shit out of them. What else do you want to do? Do you want to like pretend you're going to fall? And then you can just chuck it to Laporta, and Laporta's like, yeah, fuck yeah, that'd be sick. And then like, it's just like, I don't know. I like it. I think it's a testament to this Lions organization. I think it would be fun as shit to play for that team. I think for Dan Campbell to play with him, that camaraderie, think about how many injuries they've suffered, and they're not making excuses for it. I think that's the other thing. I think, and none of I'm not saying any of the NFL teams necessarily do, but I think you could highlight some of the teams in the NFL were like, oh, I'm banged up here, or this guy's hurt, or imagine if we didn't have this and how good we'd be. And I think what's interesting is the people for the Lions are just like, whatever, we're hurt, and they'll make note of it, but they're still playing hard. It's still not a team you want to play. But this week was just kind of like an FU, putting stuff on tape, not putting stuff on tape, and just kind of beating the shit out of the Bears for a little bit.
Okay, let's forecast something here, and let's think like 5 years down the road for just a moment. Okay.
I like
Dan Campbell, he came into the scene. I mean, he's been the head coach for the Lions for a couple of years now, but I think the Lions really started making some noise last year, right? And that's when people really started getting excited and like, oh, the Lions could be something, and they made a deep playoff run. And so this year, everybody's kind of like, and don't get me wrong, the Lions are a very good team, but everybody is now of the understanding that the Lions are a good team. And most people, I'm going to put most people here because I know Scotty goes back and forth, but most people are of the understanding that Dan Campbell is a phenomenal head coach, right? Like he's a player's coach to the nth degree. He motivates his team and is great, right? So we're looking 5 years ahead. Like, what does this Lions team look like? Are they going to fizzle out, or is Dan Campbell a legitimate, good, dare I say, great head coach that is going to be able to sustain this kind of caliber of an NFL team?
That's a good question. Because I don't think what he brings to the table is necessarily in the X's and O's. And I know if Scotty was here, he would love to talk about how he's not bringing anything X's and O's to the table, or, like in-game decision-making is really low. I think what Dan Campbell brings that is really tough to do is motivating men, especially professionals, where there's a personal agenda at hand. And even in college, you see this now with like the NIL and people getting paid and looking out for themselves and moving teams and trying to get the dollar. Like, I mean, this is what everybody does. And I think what Dan Campbell has done an amazing job at selling these men on the common goal and what it's going to take to get there and how you need to do it. And being a player himself, he gives him some credibility in the room, which is desperately needed, because you could see some of these guys like, I don't know, like a Mike McDaniel or somebody, you're like, okay,
yeah,
whatever, man. Cool. You got the X's and O's, but like, he knows what it's like to be in the trenches. Right. Like, and I think for him, that's what he brings to the table. And as long as he's doing that and he surrounds himself with the right coordinators, like a Ben Johnson, who, a few weeks ago, I was not on that boat because I thought maybe the Bears need somebody else. But the more like you circle it, like it kind of makes sense. And it would be a really interesting move for Ben Johnson. But I digress. I think the point to all of it is, as long as Dan Campbell continues to surround himself with the right coordinators, I think you're going to continue to see this team have sustained success because of what he does for getting everybody together to work towards the common goal. I mean, that's what football is through and through. Everybody on the same page, from the kicker to the ball boy to the front office to the quarterback. Everybody knows what they're going to do, and everybody's buying into it. And so I think for me, that's what I think that's what you'll continue to see from him.
I think that's very beautifully articulated, because I really do genuinely, I agree with you. I agree with everything that you really said there, and I think that really encapsulates what Dan Campbell is for the Lions. He is a leader of men that probably, and Scotty would probably maybe also agree with you to a certain variable here. I don't think he is a great X's and O's guy. I don't think he's ever been that. I think what he is a motivator and getting people to buy in on the bigger picture, right? So, it is going to be interesting.
What it is.
I think I think you really hit the nail on the head here. And can he continue to keep great coordinators around him? Ben Johnson's probably not going to be there next year, like that, unless he wants to be there. Like, he has his pick of the litter of probably a slew of different NFL teams that want him as a head coach, right? So is that going to continue to happen? If he loses Ben Johnson and he gets another, we'll know, right? And I don't think it's going to take 5 years to figure that out. But if he can still surround himself with a talented coaching staff around him and find players that really, and I think there's probably a lot of players in the NFL that would want to go play for Dan Campbell for the things that you just mentioned. Like, he's been in the trenches. He knows what it's like. That whole team is really bought into that mantra. And it's not like, and obviously we're not sitting in the locker room, but you hear these players talk and you see what happens on the field. You see the locker room from the clips and the snippets that we get as NFL fans. The whole team is really bought in on that, right? Like you just mentioned, like they're down people, but like they're not making excuses. They're not saying like, if we had a couple plays go our way, it's like, no, we're some dogs. We're going to go fight for each other and we're going to try and get this done. And it's like they've all bought into that mantra. So can Dan Campbell find other players that are willing to buy into that mantra alongside with, just like what you mentioned, finding good coordinators? Because if they continue to do what they're going to do, they're going to continue to lose coordinators because they're going to go become head coaches.
Yeah, and this team desperately needs the buy. Thinking more short term.
Yeah,
they're number one. They're number one in the NFC. The Eagles lost to the Commanders, so gives them a little bit more wiggle room heading down the stretch. So I think anything that happens from here on out, even last year getting to the NFC title game, I think a lot of like NFL, pundits or anybody with a podcast would have been like, hey, they got to get back there for it to be a success. But I think this is why, and I say this in a lot of episodes, it's like, it depends on what it looks like, because you never know. You can't just look at the result and be like, well, I'm going to judge it based on the result, because you just don't know what it looks like. And I think this season, if you're a Lions fan, you can just say success. Whatever happens, we're good with it, because at some point, these injuries will catch up to them. At some point, this lack of depth or lack of continuity or just not having your best players on the field is going to catch up to you at some point. And I don't think it's obviously not going to hurt them now. They could very well get the 1 seed, rest up, win a game, and be right back in the championship game. But I think if you're a Lions fan, or if you're grading Dan Campbell or this staff on this season, you got to say job well done, because this could have gone a totally different way for them had they not, kept the ship together. And I think that's what a coach is supposed to do. He's supposed to figure out a way to win, given the ingredients he has, and that's largely what he's done. And I think if he continues to do that, I think they'll be just fine.
All right, Alan, you want to talk about the 49ers?
I do want to talk about the 49ers. I think you want to talk about juxtaposition of where teams are at and how they've reinvented themselves with injuries. I think the 49ers, with their season now over, the loss to the Dolphins, it's over now for them. There is no more postseason hope. The talk is going to quickly shift now. What does their future look like? We're talking about 5 years out for Dan Campbell. I think next year, 2 years out for the 49ers. What do they do? This is going to be on any of the talking head shows. You're going to see it really quickly of what do they do with Brock Purdy? Do they sign him to a max extension? Do they give him all the money, based on his resume that it's due, or do they figure out a different way? I think they drafted Trey Lance a few seasons back.
Whoops.
I think is their backup, or that was their main plan. Brock Purdy being their backup plan. I think this is an interesting conversation of what we do here, because I think if you look at Brock Purdy, what he's largely brought to the table is he cooks with the ingredients in the kitchen, right? Like when everything's there for him. They were in the Super Bowl last year. They almost won that damn thing. And I don't think he was the reason they lost by any means. And so I think now you got to look at that. Is Shanahan, could they do better? Could they get a better quarterback? Like, not could they, but could you put somebody better in there? Sure. I think you could put somebody better in there, but I don't know who. I think that's the question now. If you're the 49ers or you're their fans. And so I think that's the question for you is, what would you do? You're the GM right now. You're sitting there trying to make this decision with the staff. Like, what do? Do you pay him?
Yeah. I think you have to.
Yeah.
I think you have to. First and foremost, he bought all of his offensive line Toyota Tundras, so that's pretty sweet. And
no shot. There's no way he bought those, right?
You don't think so?
No, that dude doesn't make that much.
No,
that
I know.
Has to be. When I first saw that, the first thing I thought of was this is a Toyota commercial.
Maybe
that's
Toyota
the first thing I thought.
Maybe
of.
they get. It was like buy three, get one free.
I think Toyota 100% had their hands in this. Like, it was good PR for them, for him. I don't think there's any way he actually.
I don't. If I was an offensive lineman, I really wouldn't give a shit. I'd just be like, I just got a new truck. This is awesome. Because you're right. All those offensive linemen make a lot more money than he does. Like,
they don't need that truck.
No, they don't need the truck at all. And that's why I was
How many
like,
of them are actually going to drive that truck every day?
Probably not. They might just sell it. They'll just
Maybe
put it on
one.
Craigslist.
Maybe a couple guys. Like maybe one guy does.
It's like the gift that you get from like your aunt at Christmas, and you're like, oh, it's like a mismatched socks. Like, I'll only wear it when she's around, so she thinks
that's
that I love
that's
them.
100% what it's going to be. Like, they just drive it to the stadium.
Like, why would I drive this
Like,
shitty ass Toyota Tundra when I could drive my giant beefed up F-350?
Somebody's dropping me off in a Bentley. I have this Lambo. That's a great analogy. That's what that's going to be. Brock Purdy basically just got a gift to guilt them. He's probably going to ask them, like, what do you think of the truck?
You like the fuel mileage?
Does it drive well? Does it drive well? Was it a good smooth ride, isn't it? Smooth ride, right? He probably taped something somewhere to see if anybody actually is driving it, to see if they like check it. You know how, like, during the draft process, some people will tape like $100 bill to one of the pages of the playbook to see if the quarterbacks will find it. He probably did that to his linemen just to see, like, who actually is going to get into this gift.
Who appreciates me? I mean, we're talking about we got a little sidetracked here on this Tacoma or this Tundra conversation, but if I was the GM of the 49ers, I really do think you have to sign Brock Purdy. And understand this, Brock Purdy still has another year left, right? So, like, he's got another year left on his contract for his rookie deal. And so we have another year, right? We don't need to be rash. We don't need to make any decisions right this moment. However, if I were the 49ers and I'm sitting here looking at the breakdown of this, you get one more year with him, and then Brock Purdy's a free agent, right? What you should do, and if I were the 49ers, I would sign Brock Purdy right now. I would sign Brock Purdy and give him a contract extension right this moment, because look at Patrick Mahomes, right? Is Patrick Mahomes the number one paid quarterback in the NFL? No, he's not. When his contract came out, it broke a bunch of records for what it is, and then every single year, these quarterbacks get paid more and more. You want to talk about Trevor Lawrence? You want to talk about Jared Goff? There are quarterbacks out there that are getting paid an astronomical amount of money, and Jared Goff, he's doing a great job. But like Trevor Lawrence, I couldn't believe they signed him to that, right? Daniel Jones got a really big extension a couple years ago, and it was like, what are we doing here? So it's only going to continue to increase, right? Like, the demand of what we have to pay these quarterbacks is going to continue to rise.
You bring up something really interesting. I heard it on the radio today, and I wanted to ask you this, and I purposely didn't put it anywhere. Obviously, there's however many 30 some odd starting quarterbacks, in the NFL, right? Yeah. Even this year, if you want to extrapolate who actually started games. So there's that many starting quarterbacks in the NFL. How many of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL do you actually trust to, like, go win you a playoff game, to get you to the playoffs and then win it?
I would say not a lot.
No, isn't that crazy though? Because you think of it like, oh, it's a starting quarterback in the NFL, like, and if you're taking a team mindset, you're like, oh, I'm going to sign this guy, or this is our quarterback because I think he's going to take us there. But when you really roll it out, it's like, okay, we're paying all these guys, but like, do I really trust them to get me there? And you bring up Trevor Lawrence because he has done it, right? Like, he's taken him there and he's won a game. So he's done it. Not like probably the best way anybody would have done it. It's like, well, you finished the project, but not probably as we wanted it. But and Purdy's done it, right? And so it's going to be interesting because I think what everybody's thinking of is, oh my God, think of this 49ers had Josh Allen. They're not going to get him, but like, there's a short list of quarterbacks that are like top tier without a doubt. You got it. They're going to make max dollar, but the quarterback market shifts it. So where you're like, you have to pay them max dollars. And I think the 49ers largely through this time have gotten away with not having to pay a quarterback max dollars. And now I think they're going to have to, now they're going to have to reinvent themselves.
That's kind of, that's where I was going with this argument is I also think you can sit there and look at it and say, we don't have to pay Brock Purdy max dollar. And that's not to say he doesn't need to get paid, because he does, but how many teams want Brock Purdy? Think about it like that, right? Like, we're talking about Kirk Cousins, right? If you took Kirk Cousins and you put him on the 49ers, would the 49ers still find success? I'm of the belief that yes, they would, right? Because I think a lot of that plays into Kyle Shanahan. And that's not to say, you look at Sam Darnold and you look at what Kevin O'Connell is doing, and it's like, okay, maybe he's the quarterback whisperer. But Kyle Shanahan is a very good head coach. And the 49ers have gotten away, like you said, with not having to pay a quarterback max dollar contracts. And the reason that they are such a good team, and you can argue with me because they didn't make it to the playoffs this year, but the 49ers are a good team. Like their roster is very talented.
This was injury.
It was.
They were decimated by injury. So not anybody's fault really.
But you look at the talent on the roster, and they're able to afford all of this talent in other places because they're not being held up by one guy sitting there taking the snaps every single time, right? So it's afforded them that opportunity. They're going to have to pay Brock Purdy. I think there is no world in which they don't pay Brock Purdy. I think his story alone is something that is so encapsulating in the NFL that they somebody's going to want to grab that, because at the very least, guess what? It's going to sell jerseys, right? Like if Brock Purdy left tomorrow and went over to the Dolphins, like Dolphins fans are buying that because they're like, we got Brock Purdy. That's a cool story. But I don't think they have to sit there and pay him like number one quarterback in the NFL-esque dollar amounts. Like I think they can sit there and look at the situation and say, hey, Brock Purdy, we'll pay you what we believe is fair, maybe a top 10 quarterback, salary, but we're not going to give you max dollar contract. And if you want to sit here and argue with us, we challenge you to go find somebody that's going to pay you more.
Yeah, I think they're going to have to, because for the 49ers, what are they going to do? Who are they going to go get?
100%.
They're not going to go draft the quarterback. They're not going to go. Who are they going to go sign? Are they going to go sign Kirk Cousins? Are they going to go bring Kirk here and try to make it happen? No, they're not going to make that. Here's the one thing: if I was Brock Purdy's agent, what I would say is Exhibit A. You had Jimmy Garoppolo. It didn't work out for you. He went somewhere else. Didn't work out. Darnold was here. Didn't work out. You drafted Trey Lance. That didn't work out. The one thing that's worked out was somebody that you didn't anticipate working out, that is doing it for himself. And as much as I like Shanahan as an OC, I don't know if he's necessarily like a quarterback developer, so to speak. Like, I don't think he can make anybody good.
No,
I think he needs somebody. I think he needs somebody fairly decent. And I think Garoppolo caught lightning in a bottle when they went to the Super Bowl the first time, and then he kind of fizzled out. And then I think Purdy. I think Purdy is. I think he's good. I think he's a good NFL quarterback. I think he's a solid NFL quarterback. If you're going to go tier 1, tier 2, I think he's like in that tier 2, tier 3 range of like, hey, you know what? He's solid. And as long as they can keep the roster stacked around him, I think that's all you need. And I think for Brock Purdy, I don't think they're going to offer him the max. They're going to be like, here's a giant contract. Go ahead and sign it. And I think they're going to want to get it done sooner rather than later. And I know he has a year left, but you don't want this to go another year because the value of everything just continues to go up. So if you can lock him in,
that's what I'm saying. Get him
sweet into a dealer. Just do it now. And I think his agents are going to want to do it now too, because you don't want him paying on 1 year. Everybody's dying around him. He already had a significant injury in the playoffs a few years ago against the Eagles. He's going to want his money now. He's going to want to be able to actually buy those Toyota Tundras, not instead be part of a marketing ploy.
All right, let's play a quick game here. And I'm going to ask you, is would you rather? And it's would you rather Brock Purdy or these quarterbacks that I'm going to name as your quarterback for your NFL team, okay? Would you rather have...
Long term or just like for a season?
Long term. For the next three,
okay, gotcha.
We're going to say 3 to 5 years.
3 to 5 years, gotcha.
Okay, and I'm going to give you a slew of different quarterbacks here. So we'll start with, would you rather have Brock Purdy or Tua?
Brock.
Okay. Brock Purdy or Trevor Lawrence?
Brock Purdy.
Okay. Brock Purdy or, let's go, Anthony Richardson?
No, Brock Purdy.
Okay. Yeah.
Unless I'm running it in from the 1 yard line.
Okay. Brock Purdy or Bryce Young?
Oh. What a difference.
Talking about lightning in a bottle. Bryce Young is starting to catch lightning. I know.
It's what can he be? Yeah. I'm a gambling man. I would take Bryce just based on what I've seen right now, and that's totally like very here and now, not thinking of anything long term.
The what have you done?
Because I think
mantra.
Yeah, that's what it is, because he's definitely turned the corner. He looks like he's got some swagger, and he's making some plays with a roster that's also, you want to talk about not having anybody. I think that's the thing in my eyes. If I swapped him, would it look a little better?
Yeah.
And I'm curious. Like, a part of me is like, curious as to what that'd be. I'm not confident in that call to say Bryce Young. Like I would switch him, but I'm curious because I think there's something there. But I think it's even. And I mean, if I was a safe conservative investor, I would still say Brock Purdy. But part of me wants to just say Bryce Young just to see.
Okay. Let's do Brock Purdy or Dak Prescott.
You got to go Brock, don't you?
Okay. I would hope. I mean, I am. I would in that situation. Brock Purdy or Kyler Murray?
I think, unfortunately for Kyler Murray, I think he is what he is right now. I think you've seen everything that he gives you. It's very erratic. I think it's sporadic success, a lot of scrambling. I don't think you can necessarily build an offense around that, what he wants to do, which is kind of like run around and chuck it sometimes. Like some of the stuff needs to be on schedule. Got to take Brock Purdy.
Okay. Brock Purdy or we'll round this out, Baker Mayfield.
Still Brock Purdy.
Okay.
I love Baker. I think Baker's fun.
I think Baker is
kind of a. I think he's a fun. I think he's a gunslinger. I think he's a fun gunslinger. But I think if I'm just like, I want something. I want to know what I'm going to get week in and week out. I want something. I want the steady hand. I'll just take Brock Purdy.
I want the girl that I know is going to, actually show up for the date instead of maybe ghost me every third date.
Yeah, maybe not put out, but like he'll be there. We can watch a movie together.
Yeah,
like Baker, good. I know. Yeah, Baker is kind of like the slut. Like he may not show up, but if he shows up, like it's happening.
It's going down.
It's going down. Like that's a shower. You trim everything up, make sure it looks nice type event. Brock Purdy's like, she might come to like Thanksgiving dinner and she'll be there.
Nice of the family.
She's gonna. Yeah.
I don't even know how to make a pivot over to this next game, so I'm just gonna do it.
You're really good at it. Let's see how you do it. Go for it.
I'm really struggling here. I genuinely am trying to figure out a spin zone to get me to this next game, and I have absolutely nothing. Well, you know what?
Here we go. I have one, but you go.
Look, man. That girl who showed the Baker Mayfields, those that are like those girls where they show up and then they leave and they show. You win some and you lose some, and guess what? We could say the same thing about the Cowboys there. Okay,
there we go.
That was my spin zone. You win some and you still lose, right? That's the Cowboys. So the Cowboys, they did win this game 26-24 against the Buccaneers. And while frankly, I'm very surprised that they beat the Buccaneers, if I'm being honest with you. But it ultimately does not matter because the Cowboys were still knocked out of playoff contention due to the surprising Commanders win against the Eagles, which I don't think we're covering today. But that was pretty freaking awesome. That was a great win by the Commanders. And honestly, I think I hate the Eagles. Like I was rooting for the Commanders. I loved the Commanders one, but we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about the Cowboys. Mike McCarthy, his contract expires at the end of this season, which is what we have been talking about all season long on this show. Will he be the head coach for the Cowboys next season? So Jerry Jones, he did state after this game that he was, quote, really proud of not only the team but Mike McCarthy and his leadership. And this is the quote from Jerry Jones. He said, "All I can say," here, I'll try and read it in a Jerry Jones voice. "All I can say is what a good job. How good a job he's doing. Don't have thoughts that I would share as to anything about what we do after we're through playing this year." So I'll ask you again, Alan, is Jerry Jones, is he the head coach after the season?
Hold on. We're not glossing over that impression you just did of Jerry Jones. I think it was good. I think he did a good job of trying to be old. It didn't have enough racism behind the voice. I think Jerry Jones has like a little everything he says has just like a little twinge of like, ooh, there's some racist, there's some deeply ingrained racist thoughts behind here. Like a racial slur might slip out at any moment if he's not careful. But other than that, I thought it was a really good job of sounding old.
Thank you.
I think Mike McCarthy, I'm going to say yes, because this is the age-old, we didn't have my quarterback, or, we got Cooper Rush. We're still winning down the stretch. They still made it happen. We got knocked out because the Commanders are salty. They're playing well. They got the rookie of the year, offensive rookie of the year on their team. Like, what were we supposed to do? So I think he's going to, just for that thought alone. But I think in true Cowboys fashion, this is not very long. This is not like forward thinking. They're just thinking of like, oh, let me reward you for how you did previously. Not like, what do I want my team to actually look like? Because Mike McCarthy's not the answer. Dak Prescott's not the answer. I think this team is just in a world of hurt. They don't have a lot of weapons. It's tough for them to do some things. And they won this game because their defense played out of their mind down the stretch. Really limiting the Buccaneers and stopping them from doing what they wanted to do and creating some key turnovers. So he's going to be the head coach, but I don't think it's the right decision. But he's going to be, because everybody can ride Dak was our starting quarterback was hurt. What do you want me to do? Kind of like excuse as you're, in your boss's office at the end of the year. You're like, hey, what do you want me to do? Everybody's dead.
Yeah. Do you think if you were drafted to go play for the Cowboys, you would feel as if that like you're stuck in purgatory? Because that's how I would feel.
I would. The shitty thing is the Cowboys organization and the amenities they have around that team is like top notch.
Yeah.
Like that's
except they don't have don't forget they don't have a roof. Like the sun just blinds their wide receivers.
Yeah, so God can watch. Yeah. So God can watch. It's unfortunate because the franchise themselves, it's a solid. I mean, it's still one of the most
sought after, highly.
Yeah, I mean, this is still an iconic team. Franchise. Yeah, it's still iconic, and so I think for that you would want to go play there. But with McCarthy and Jerry Jones, like I wouldn't want to get caught up in all that because I don't even know. You talk about teams with identity. We've talked about that for a few weeks now. Like I don't know what their identity is. Like
I wouldn't feel safe if I was there. Like I would always feel like I'm like walking on glass or like I'm walking on eggshells and like.
Oh, I think you meant like physically.
No, like I would feel very unsafe on the Cowboys. Not like physically unsafe, but like unsafe of like, are they going to cut me tomorrow?
Yeah, it's just I would be scared because Jerry Jones is a very erratic roster manager.
Yes, and that's what
what I mean. Like he's like, I'm going to pay Zeke a shit ton of money, then I'm going to get rid of him, then I'm going to bring him back. Like the fuck.
Welcome home, doing? Boy.
What are you even doing? You got rid of Amari Cooper. You paid
boy.
Zeke. Yeah, that's actually very accurate. That's probably more spot on. It all goes back to that decision. Yeah, I had a little. There's going to be some slurs dropping out of this mouth. We've said it. It all started with Amari Cooper. They didn't want to pay him. They moved on. They paid Zeke what everybody wasn't paying running backs. They just do the wrong opposite thing that everybody else is doing. Like the logical. Some teams are doing like they're zigging when everybody's zagging, but it makes sense. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, this works out. They do like they do it the wrong way every time. They zig the wrong way.
So you think to put a bow on this, you think Mike McCarthy will be the head coach next season?
Unfortunately, yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
We're talking about coaching changes. Let's talk about our boy Dougie P. The Raiders win this game 19-14 against the Jaguars.
My dad was so pissed.
There is no way that Doug Peterson gets another season with the Jaguars, right? Like there is absolutely no chance that Dougie P gets another shot here. Like I understand, and you mentioned when we were talking about the Cowboys how they lost a quarterback. I understand that they lost Trevor Lawrence, but this team was looking like straight booty juice before Trevor Lawrence got hurt, right? We've been saying every week that this has got to be the week that Dougie P gets fired, right? But it just keeps going.
Mm-hmm.
You think they're just going to get rid of him at the end of the season? Like there's zero chance he is the head coach in next season?
Like you said, I'm surprised he's still here. So yeah.
Okay.
When did we say that? What week was the London
God, that was
games?
like week 6 or 7, was it not?
Yeah, like the clock's still ticking, and we thought this was going to be over. I maybe behind closed doors they've told him this is going to be it for him. Like they're going to save face. Maybe there's a lot of respect there behind the scenes where they're not just going to like kick him out into the curb. Because I mean, what are you going to do mid? They're not fighting for anything. They're not doing anything.
Yeah,
you kind of let a guy ride off into the sunset. Oh, that'd be like on the owner.
Should we just start
spreading?
Should we just start spreading that rumor? Like
that
rumor is Doug Peterson has dirt on. I don't even know who the owner's name of the.
Let's Google this. Hold on. We have computers.
Jags is. We do have technology.
If I can type.
I forget about that.
Oh yeah, is it Shahid Khan?
Yeah, Doug Peterson. Rumor on the street is Doug Peterson. We'll put it over on LeatherBrainz X after the show. Rumor on the street is that Dougie P has some really bad stuff on him, and that's why he's still sticking around.
I mean, we've all seen pictures of their owner. He kind of looks like he might dabble in like, drug running and.
I don't want to look.
Shad Khan.
Shad Khan. Oh, yeah. This guy,
You know what I
got
mean?
a thick
I don't think-
mustache. He's got
Yeah,
some
I don't-
bad stuff
There's
going
no
on.
way. Even if Dougie P does have dirt on him, he doesn't look like he's bothered by dirt from Dougie P. I don't think he doesn't strike me as a guy that's going to be sweating about any dirt that.
Dude,
that
this
Doug
guy
Peterson
looks
might
like
have.
he belongs, like his face belongs on a pizza box. Does it not? Like, look at his face and
does.
tell me that is not a pizza box
Yeah.
face.
Yeah, he kind of does.
It
Hey,
100%
he's worth
does.
$13.3 billion. You know, I don't know if he's sweating too much of what Dougie P is doing.
No, but
I think this is more of.
this
I
guy
think
looks
this is
really
more of him
cool,
just.
though. That
He's a
mustache
short king, though.
is
He's only
freaking
5'9".
impressive. Oh. I mean,
He's
is
a
that
short
short king? Because I'm 5'10", so now I feel really bad.
Oh, anything. If the second number is still single digit, I consider that short king.
Second number is single digit?
So 5'9", not 5'10", not 5'11".
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
6 foot. Yeah,
All right.
you see what I'm saying?
All right. So
Anyways.
I barely made the cusp.
Yeah, you made it. You're not
Okay,
a short king.
thank God.
I don't think you're that short.
I'm average height, 5'10".
Yeah.
Just average.
Yeah. See.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're fine. So it's not dirt, but for whatever reason, they're letting him hang on and riding this thing out. But I don't think he is. There's no way he's.
Okay, I agree. I hope
average.
not. I just hope not. It has been going on for too long, and I don't understand why not. But I guess what do they, like you said, what do they have to lose? Like, why do it? Like, just finish it out, and maybe the respect's there. But I did want to talk about the Raiders, though, because it does look like perhaps the Raiders did make the right move at the 13th overall pick this last year. When they drafted Brock Bowers. And I will die on this hill until the Raiders come out and just admit that they wanted to draft Michael Penix there. Because I do believe that's the case. I think they were trying to draft Michael Penix. Didn't work out, and they drafted Brock Bowers. But I think they really hit a lottery ticket here with Brock Bowers, and they made the right choice. Because when this happened and we were all watching the draft live, I was like, what just happened? They took Bowers? Like, I didn't want this. Bowers wasn't supposed to go to the Raiders. And now I'm going to read you off a couple stat lines here that are pretty interesting. So, Brock Bowers has now reached 100 receptions this season and has become one of only 4 tight ends in NFL history to record 100 receptions through the first 15 games of a single season. Okay, there's more, though. The other tight ends that have done this, by the way, you got Old Man Witten, you got Travis Kelce, and you got Zach Ertz. So you're sitting in good company, right? But Alan, there's more. Okay. Not only that,
going.
Bowers has also passed Jalen Waddle for the most receptions in NFL history by a player at any position through the first 15 games of their rookie season. You need more? Brock Bowers has passed Darren Waller for the most receptions by a player at any position or experience level in Raiders history through the first 15 games of a single season. But wait, hold on. There's more. Brock Bowers now has the second most receiving yards in NFL history by a tight end in their rookie season, beating out the shit stain himself, Kyle Pitts, who held the record back in 2021. Oh, hold on here. Brock Bowers has also logged 11 straight games with 3+ receptions, the longest streak by a rookie in Raiders history. So yeah, I would say they made the right choice drafting Brock Bowers, because he is,
I think,
been the heart and soul of this Raiders offense.
Yep. I mean, we'll see what Penix ends up being, because if Penix ends up being, a Pro Bowl playoff quarterback perennially, you could say maybe they didn't make their best. Like maybe they
couldn't draft Penix.
They couldn't draft him, but I'm saying like maybe, it worked out for both for some. Largely tight ends, and I think the Raiders are far away from just one tight end being successful. I think he is a pro. I think he's like an all-pro tight end on a team that is struggling and doesn't have many other options. I think, which is going to hurt him in the long fall, because that's not him, but the team. Like, they got to figure out the rest of the pieces. I think Bowers is a great piece to have. It's a great security blanket, and I think for O'Connell or Minshew for the large part of this year, I think he's been that security blanket. A lot of people said that coming out of college. He was, amazing. I think this is just he's a talented pass catcher, tight end notwithstanding. Like, even him being a tight end, he's just super talented. I think he knows how to catch it. He knows how to get in position. He manages his body really well in and out of breaks, contorts his body well to make the catch, stays in bounds. Like, he does all the things like a pro would do. And I think he's the one shiny object you have if you're a Raiders fan that you're like, all right, We got this thing here.
And
it's at the tight end position, but we got it.
You and I don't know if we've ever really talked about this. You and I made a trade in our dynasty, and I know we're not a fantasy football podcast, but I do just want to talk about this for just a moment because
I was going to ask you if you only put this in for fantasy purposes.
I didn't. But as I started getting everything going, I was like, okay, I need to talk about this for fantasy football. You and I did a trade in our dynasty league, like right during the draft process, right? So like while the draft was happening live.
I don't remember who I got.
You drafted Brock Bowers at the 110. Yep. And I traded you Jaden Reed and Jerry Jeudy for him.
Oh, fuck yeah. I think we both made out great.
No, I think overall we both did really, really well. But I never shared with you because you screwed me over, by the way. You weren't supposed to draft Brock Bowers. The guy
I did
after
it
you
I needed wide receivers.
Yeah, and the guy after you was supposed to draft him, and him and I already had a deal in place. Like I was like, hey, if you get Bowers here at the 201, I will trade you and buy that pick from you. And I had it lined up where I had to pay you more for Brock Bowers than what I was going to pay this other guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But and I wanted Bowers no matter what because I really wanted to solidify a young tight end so I wouldn't have to deal with it for a long time. And the reason Bowers, I think, would probably go much earlier in the draft had he not gone to the Raiders. And initially, I was really disappointed by him going to the Raiders. And then I started looking at like the outlook of what this Raiders organization is going to be over the next few years. And I was like, this is a smash buy for me because here's the problem that the Raiders are going to run into. Yes, they don't have a quarterback. At the time, they had Devontae Adams, but I had figured he was going to be off roster by the midseason anyway, which is exactly what played out. And I was like, this Raiders team has so many holes that it needs to fill in a lot of different areas. Bowers is going to be a shining star for them because they're not going to have a lot of weapons around him. So, and it was a gamble. I mean, that's fantasy football in general is a gamble. But I'm glad that it kind of paid off in that way for me. And he's looked amazing. Like, and I think that's really good. That's going to continue to be the trend for the Raiders. Is like I think he is going to be their number one pass catcher for quite a while.
Just so you know, my philosophy in any draft that I'm in is I'm always going to take who I think is the next best available every time.
Yeah,
I don't care if I need something. I'm going to take the next best available because either I'm going to keep him and he's on my team and nobody else has him and I'll figure it out later, or I can trade him and turn him around and get something get something else. But I think this trade I would say worked out fairly well. I think Jaden Reed and Jerry Jeudy have shown to be really good this season for me.
I think for you, the thing that hurts you the most is that they benched Jameis Winston because Jerry Jeudy was on a wrecking tear with Jameis Winston.
He was crushing it. But I'm happy he's got signs of life in his body.
Yeah, no, I think the trade overall went really well. I mean, Jaden Reed's a really good
trade.
It was a good trade. I think it worked out well for both parties.
Anybody listening, my other tight ends were Sam Laporta and Travis Kelce. So
yeah, you were fine. That's why you weren't supposed to draft him.
And slaps the fence. I didn't need to draft him at all, but it was a luxury. It was a luxury one.
I knew you. I had you pay. I was like, okay, there's no chance he drafts a tight end because he doesn't need one because he's got these.
Yeah, because I had already gotten Drake May earlier in the draft because I had 2 first-round picks. So then I was like, I'm just gonna go next best available and see what happens.
Hose me. All right, let's do kickoff karaoke and get the hell out of here. So. Kickoff karaoke, for anybody that does not know, kickoff karaoke is where Alan, Scotty, and myself are picking against the spread with 4 chosen games every single week. We're keeping score, by the way, and whoever loses this season-long bet has to sing the national anthem live for all of you over on Twitter before the Super Bowl, or X, excuse me. So, currently in the lead, Alan, you are sitting pretty at the top of the ladder at 36. We got Scotty in the middle of the rung at 34, and I am just dangling here at the bottom still at 31. But I'm climbing, baby. I'm climbing slowly. It's not over until the fat lady sings.
You got 2 weeks left.
Not the fat lady.
I think if I can get 2 more games, I think mathematically,
I think you'll be okay.
That puts me safe.
Yeah, I really am just competing with Scotty at the moment. You're too far out of.
Well, we'll see. No, because let's see what you pick here. I've already put mine down, so you can pick which way.
Well, I'll let you go first. So the 4 games this week that we have chosen are the Jets at the Bills, the Packers at the Vikings, the Raiders at the Saints, and the Broncos at the Bengals. Alan, because you're at the top of the ladder, you are going to go first. Jets at the Bills. The Bills are 10-point favorites. Who are you taking?
That's a big line. If you watch the Bills game yesterday against the Patriots, if the Bills don't get that late defensive score, we're talking they lose to the Patriots at home. And that's interesting because Josh Allen didn't look very Josh Allen. I know there's a lot of people out there saying they held some things back because they don't want to show anything for the playoffs. That's neither here nor there. Big line. I'm banking on the Jets just being completely folded. The Bills still have something to play for. They're still looking at the 1 seed. I'm going to take the Bills -10. I don't love that at all, but it's probably just more has to do with like I'm betting the Jets just totally shit the bed and continue to shit the bed.
Okay. Scotty's in the middle of the rung, and he is taking the Jets because, in his quote, not mine, that is an astronomical spread. That's a huge margin.
Is a lot. I might regret that.
It is a lot. I think I got to hedge bets here, man. I mean, you're both on either side of me, but Scotty is closer, so I want to take the Bills here so I can try and climb it. I mean, I got to start making money moves, baby.
I love this.
I'm going to take the Bills. I'm going to take the Bills solely because Scotty took the Jets, and I have to try and do something.
I love this.
So I'll take the Bills and cross my fingers. Packers at the Vikings. The Vikings are 1.5-point favorites. Scotty is taking the Vikings. I'm going to take the Packers here. I'm going to take the Packers. I do think the Packers are cooking with grease, and I think they're about to start a huge fire. But this game, honestly, is probably the game of the week for me. I genuinely am very, very excited for this because I think both of these teams are looking phenomenal right now. And, I mean, with Vegas having it at a 1.5-point spread, that tells me that they're not even very confident as far as who they think is going to be a clear winner here. So I'm going to take the Packers. I'm going to take the Packers on this one. And, Alan, who are you taking?
Same. Packers, I've been saying it for a few weeks now. I think the Packers might be the team to beat in the NFC, and that's crazy to say, seeing as they're like third in their division. But in a loaded division, I think they're getting healthy. They're leaning on their running game. They have the passing game if they need it. I'm going to take the Packers. I think they get the job done finally against the Vikings. The Vikings looked a little sketchy against the Seahawks, so I'm going to take the Packers.
Okay. And now we got the Raiders at the Saints. The Saints are 1.5-point favorites. I think I'm gonna take. Golly, this is tough. This is just a gross game. I don't know who picked this game, but they're an idiot because this is a game that is just absolutely nasty. It was me, by the way. I picked this game.
I don't know why they did this.
I don't either.
I don't even know what to think of this game.
I don't either. That's the problem because it's two ass teams. I'm gonna take the Saints. I think it's just a gut feeling on this one. I think the Saints will come out and win this game. It's more of a gut. I think the Saints offensively do have a little bit more weapons than the Raiders do at this point. But this is a gross game. This is just gross all around.
Yeah.
So, and Vegas doesn't know either at 1.5. So I'll take the Saints. Scotty is also taking the Saints here, and I don't know why I didn't get the reasoning. But Alan, who are you taking?
I have no idea. Coin flip. I'm going to take the Raiders. Things don't make sense towards the end of the season. Raiders just won last week. Maybe they're kind of picking themselves off the mat a little bit, trying to win some games down the stretch here. I don't know, but I'm just going to take the Raiders. Okay.
And last game here, we got the Broncos at the Bengals. Bengals are 3.5-point favorites. Alan, we'll start with you.
This is an interesting game. We didn't talk about it this week, but the Bengals they have a path to make the playoffs still, and this is going to be the game that determines whether or not they actually make it. The Broncos and Bengals are kind of sitting right there. Broncos currently in the playoffs. Bengals on the outside looking in. Bengals have to win this one to keep their hopes alive. Broncos are going to be fighting for their lives. I'm going to take the Bengals. I think the Bengals offense can do enough. I know Bo Nix is playing well. I don't know if he's going to do enough to keep up with the Bengals, but I'm going to take the Bengals here in the 3.5 at home.
Okay. Scotty's also taking the Bengals, and I'm hard pressed to take the Bengals too. They're in a fight for their lives right now, and a part of me really does want to take the Broncos because the Broncos are really starting to play good football right now, and the Bengals defense is probably the worst defense in all of the NFL right now. Like, it's bad. It's so bad. But I do think the Bengals, this is a now shit or get off the pot moment for the Bengals, and I think that they're going to have no choice but to win this game, and I'll take the 3.5 there and give the Bengals a victory. So, and Scotty's
games down the stretch.
It is, and because of the playoff implications, it makes it that much more juicy. So, Scotty's also taking the Bengals here, so we're all in favor of the Bengals. So we will see what happens. Do we ever decide what happens if we tie in kickoff karaoke?
Whoever ties sings it together. That's what my thought was.
Okay, that was my thought too. Or like you split up and do a portion of the song or something.
Yeah, you just do it together.
Okay. All right. We'll have to get Scotty's approval because there might be a chance he might die.
We don't know. He didn't get This was the episode we all agreed we'd decide whatever the tiebreaker.
All right. Well, there we go.
So
We're
he
all
wasn't here.
together. Okay. If we all tie anyway. That's it. That's all the time we got. Everybody, go check out LeatherBrainz.com. If you made it this far, you've enjoyed the show, go check out LeatherBrainz.com. There is daily articles over there being written by a group of writers. It's all free, 100% free for you. So if you enjoy NFL content, go check it out. And then also hit the subscribe button, right? Wherever you might be at, whether you're pull out your phone, get on Apple Podcasts, go to YouTube, Spotify, wherever, we're everywhere. Go hit the subscribe button. Truly does mean the world to us for such a small little podcast such as ourselves. And we appreciate all you brainiacs, you all dirty, nasty, I was going to say mother effers, but I'll leave it where it lies. All right. I love you. I love all of you. Alan, I love you. This has been a pleasure. We.
Yes, brother. Are
out.
This is our Colts. This is our team. We bleed blue. This is our Colts. Whether win or lose, we love them. For the shoe, Colts Fort. Let the world hear us now. This is our team. Go Colts.